Good to see everybody this morning, and it's another great day in the Lord. And we've been looking at great questions of the Old Testament, and so this has been a labor of love for months now, and it's been neat. This is based on a book by Leroy Brownlow from like the early 50s, and so all of the variation that could be imagined has really come up in these questions, and we're only in the book of Exodus. It starts chronologically through those in order through those books, and we're on number 16 and only at the beginning of Exodus. And the question is, what do you mean by this service? And we'll talk about that in a second. What we're going to get into is the idea of memories and memorials. We just got done with Memorial Day. Thinking about people who men and women who paid the huge the hugest price for the freedoms that we enjoy, and for the world at large. And we have these, we think about holidays. We think about what we have set aside. I come to you this morning on Father's Day, right? On Father's Day. And every time one of these holidays rolls around, or one of these days rolls around, I think like, well, how or should how can I work? How can I work whatever it is, Mother's Day, into the sermon, or Father's Day into the sermon? Kind of like when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Idea. But why does this cross my mind? It crosses my mind because it's important. It's important to most of the people sitting here to think about Father's Day on Father's Day. It was important to people around Memorial Day to think about Memorial Day for most people. I think about, and one of the things that we're going to think about is how these memorials, they don't just look back. They don't only look back, they also look forward, and they inform your present thoughts and your present behaviors for the future. I think of something like Father's Day got me. And I was thinking about, I bet Eddie and Shannon don't even remember. I don't know if you remember Trista Fossa from, she's a realtor in Kelseyville. Well, one day, I saw something she posted on Facebook, and one day she brought her very young daughter to the Loch Lomond pool. And so I saw a post about this, and I started thinking about swimming. Swimming's one of the most important things to me. I adore swimming. I grew up with a pool. And so I think about my memories of that. I grew up with a pool, and I spent every day of the summer basically, in that pool for hours and hours, right? And then I grow up and I become a father. And I moved to Lake County. Well, I become a father in Lake County, California. And Eddie and Shannon build a house in a little community called Loch Lomond. Christy and I are down by the lake, half hour away. They're up in the pines. And one of the only, if not the only, Olympic-sized pool, I think, in the entire county was their community pool. We spent a lot of time in that. And I was self-absorbed as a kid, and my memories revolve around self. And I spent time self-absorbed in that pool too, but my memories are all about being an uncle and a father in that pool for years and years. Memories and memorials can change shape and can change meaning as time goes on. We need to read from Exodus 12 in order to understand where this quote comes from. And I did not put it into the slideshow because I'd be like tapping the whole time. So let's read Exodus 12. Exodus 12. This is the institution of the Passover. And one of the most interesting things about this is that God institutes a memorial before the event has happened that is going to be memorialized. Don't forget that. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month shall be for you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year for you. Tell all the congregation of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, every man shall take a lamb according to their father's houses, a lamb for a household. And if the household is too small for a lamb, then he and his nearest neighbor shall take according to the number of persons, according to what each can eat. You shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male, a year old. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it until the 14th day of this month, when the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill their lambs at twilight. Then they shall take some of the blood and put it on the two doorposts and the lintel of the houses in which they eat it. They shall eat the flesh that night, roasted on the fire, with unleavened bread and bitter herbs they shall eat it. Do not eat any of it raw or boiled in water, but roasted, its head with its legs and its inner parts. And you shall let none of it remain until the morning. Anything that remains until the morning you shall burn. In this manner you shall eat it, with your belt fastened, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, and I will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and on all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. I am the Lord. The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are, and when I see the blood I will pass over you. No plague will befall you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. This day shall be for you a memorial day, and you shall keep it as a feast to the Lord. Throughout your generations as a statute forever you shall keep it as a feast. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall remove leaven out of your houses, for if anyone eats what is leavened from the first day until the 7th day, that person shall be cut off from Israel. On the first day you shall hold a holy assembly, and on the 7th day a holy assembly. No work shall be done on those days. But what everyone needs to eat, that alone may be prepared by you. And you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for on this very day I brought your hosts out of the land of Egypt. Therefore you shall observe this day throughout your generations as a statute forever. In the first month from the 14th day of the month at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. For 7 days no leaven is to be found in your houses. If anyone eats what is leavened, that person will be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he is a sojourner or a native of the land. You shall eat nothing leavened. In all your dwelling places you shall eat unleavened bread. Then Moses called all the elders of Israel and said to them, Go and select lambs for yourselves according to your clans and kill the Passover lamb. Take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and touch the lintel and the two doorposts with the blood that is in the basin. None of you shall go out of the door of his house until the morning, for the Lord will pass through to strike the Egyptians. And when he sees the blood on the lintel and on the two doorposts, the Lord will pass over and will not allow the destroyer to enter your house to strike you. And then I did put this part of it. You shall observe this rite as a statute for you and for your sons forever. And when you come to the land that the Lord will give you as he has promised, you shall keep this service. And when your children say to you, What do you mean by this service? You shall say, It is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover. For he passed over the houses of the people of Israel in Egypt when he struck the Egyptians, but spared our houses. And the people bowed their heads and worshipped. You know, think about all the detail in this. God supplied the details. They were important. This memorial was important to God. God understands memorials. He understands why we would want to have memorials. He understands why we would want to have days of special consideration for special things, whether that's a mother or a father, or someone who has died in battle, or someone who has lived through battle and is haunted and hurt by that. This Passover would, according to Leroy Brownlow, perpetuate and keep fresh in human memory an act of divine mercy. But in some ways, memorials look forward. They're going to impact future behavior. This was something that he's talking to them in the present, and for the rest of their lives, they're going to observe the Passover. And for over 1,000 years. God's memorials may even foreshadow future events. So the Passover is the first thing from this morning. And the rainbow. The rainbow. We think of that question that Moses says, or God says, your children might ask you, why are you doing this? Why are we doing this Passover? Another question that might arise in the mind of a child is, what's that there in the sky? What does that mean? That is something mildly rare and special and different and beautiful. What might it mean? And we read in Genesis chapter 9, verses 8 through 17. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every beast of the earth, as many as came out of the ark. It is for every beast of the earth. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood. And never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth, when I bring clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds. I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh, and the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth. And you know how important water is, scientifically, to the rainbow. There's no rainbows without the water in the atmosphere. And there's obviously a lesson in this as here we are in Pride Month, right? There's obviously a lesson in this of how God's truth and His memorials can be twisted, misinterpreted or misused or whatever you want to call it. When Romans 1 in verse 18, Romans 1:18, it says, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world and the things that have been made. So they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. Right? The subversion of lots of things in it. And and then it says, therefore God gave them up in the lusts of their hearts to impurity, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. Worshipping the creature rather than the Creator is an overarching thing that happens when any of us put self at the center of things. You put self on a pedestal and God's not there. If self is on the pedestal, God isn't. And so these things, the materialistic, evolutionarily materialistic view of things that places man at the top of things because there is nothing higher, because we evolved from some unicellular organism, supposedly. The idea that I can do whatever I want with my body because it's my body. I can kill my unborn child. I can love whoever I want to love, regardless of the order of things that God has established. These are suggested. These are suggested, implied. These conversations come out of a sign like the rainbow in the sky. And the world will be destroyed again, but not by water. If you turn to 2 Peter 3. 2 Peter 3 in verses 10 through 13. 2 Peter 3:10. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief, and then the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the heavenly bodies will be burned up and dissolved, and the earth and the works that are done on it will be exposed. Since all these things are thus to be dissolved, what sort of people ought you to be in lives of holiness and godliness, waiting for and hastening the coming of the day of God, because of which the heavens will be set on fire and dissolved, and the heavenly bodies will melt as they burn. But according to his promises, we are waiting for new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. And coincidentally, what we read at the scripture reading this morning from Matthew 24, Matthew 24:36, but concerning that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven nor the Son, but the Father only. For as were the days of Noah, right, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day when Noah entered the ark. And they were unaware until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. Right? Sound a little bit like Thessalonians when it says the day of the Lord is going to come like a thief, right? And when everybody is saying peace, safety, I bet the people in Noah's day were saying peace, safety. Never mind that crazy dude, that crazy conspiracy theorist over there talking about some flood. The omer of manna. So an omer is a little over 2 liters. So, but two solid, 2 solid liters of a solid rather than a liquid. So if you're thinking of a 2-liter bottle filled with manna, it might have been hard to shove the manna into that little hole, but just get the idea of that volume in your mind. What do you mean by this container of manna? Some of you are wondering, what's manna? That's okay, nobody knows. It's literally the word means, what is it? Literally, like in Hebrew, like they're like, oh, what's that? Let's eat it. Reading your Bible. Let's read. We're out of time already, so let's just read. So God provides for them. He's got millions of people in one section of land. They are not going to live off the land. They are not going to live off the land. It would be physically impossible. That's where God comes in. He comes in with a miracle. And the miracle is this flaky substance that would fall from the sky, and it was gatherable. And they were told to gather about an omer of it for themselves. They would, so they were to gather about 2 liters of this stuff. I don't know what 2 liters is in dry measurement, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Maybe it may not matter. Okay, Kathy Dawn has given me my approval. She says it doesn't matter. Good. All right, they were to gather that. All right, but they don't all have like an omer container. All right, and so some gather extra, some gather less. God balances it out. God Himself miraculously balances out what they have gathered. They're not supposed to gather too much, or it grows, turns putrescent with worms and stuff, and so God miraculously makes the point that, and the constant reminder that He is balancing, He is providing, and here, this is what ends up in the Ark of the Covenant. In the Ark of the Covenant, along with other important religious items for the Jews, they carried this around. And so I imagine it was miraculously preserved as well. Moses, it's a miraculous substance to begin with. This is what the Lord has commanded. Let an omer of it, same measurement as they were supposed to gather each day. And then on Friday, before their Sabbath began, they gathered a double portion of it, so that they would be able to not gather on that Sabbath day. Let an omer of it be kept throughout your generations, so that they may see the bread with which I fed you in the wilderness, and when I brought you out of the land of Egypt. And Moses said to Aaron, take a jar and put an omer of manna in it, then place it before the Lord to be kept throughout your generations. As the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron placed it before the testimony to be kept. And that is another memorial of God's providence. It's also another thing that looks forward to. It looks forward to Jesus. He says, in a way, I'm that bread that came out of heaven. I'm the bread of life. I'm the miraculous providence of God. I'm the one whose words you should take into yourself and digest them and allow them to change you. The balancing of the portions is another lesson about the sufficiency of God. Right? What if you did get a little less and you couldn't, and you're like, which kid am I not going to feed? All right, you. All right? No, that didn't happen because God made the sufficiency for them. And 1,000 years later, it would still be talked about. It would be talked about in the context of all the better things that we have in the New Covenant. Behind the second curtain was a second section called the Most Holy Place, having the golden altar of incense and the Ark of the Covenant covered on all sides with gold, in which was a golden urn holding the manna, and Aaron's staff that budded, and the tablets of the covenant. And God still provides. God still provides. In the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 6, He says, therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat, or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Isn't life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his span of life? And why are you anxious about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. There's only so far the stress and concern of your day-to-day financial life goes. Just like that manna. God was sufficient. And he says, but if God so clothes the grass of the field, which today is alive and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? And we come to the Lord's Supper. And someone might ask, perhaps a child, what does eating the bread and drinking the cup mean? And it's a sweet and simple memorial to Jesus. Paul in 1 Corinthians 11:24. It says, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, this is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me. In the same way also, he took the cup after supper, saying, this cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me. It is in remembrance of Jesus. And it is, we talk about proclaiming the Lord's death, but it also mentions until he comes. It's what we're doing in the presence. That's the main reason we're here this morning, is to take the Lord's Supper. Okay? You're not going to find a verse that says, oh yeah, you got to sing on the first day of the week. Oh yeah, you got to pray on the first day of the week, even though it doesn't make sense to do the Lord's Supper without prayer. You don't have a verse that says, a lot of things, but we know that we're supposed to be here on the first day of the week. You don't skip this. You don't skip this. For any reason. For as often as you eat this bread and drink the cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. And it looks forward. It looks forward to Jesus' return. And if we were to go back, I meant to put verse 23 in verse 23, it talks about he's instituting it. Just like God institutes the Passover before the Passover happens, Jesus institutes the Lord's Supper before his death. I think that's worth noting. And what's Sunday? What's Sunday? Maybe there's a lesson in Exodus 20 where God says, remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. I think it's the fourth commandment. Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. They didn't have to go, which one? Can I do it just around Christmas? Or Hanukkah? Sorry. They understood it was every Sabbath. You don't have to specify. And we got Acts 20 and verse 7. It said, on the first day of the week, when we were gathered together to break bread, Paul talked with them, intending to depart on the next day, and he proclaimed his speech until midnight. That's the early church. Seemed to be meeting on the first day of the week for this. And it makes sense. I can't remember stuff that happened 6 months ago. I watched people with dementia, or watching their memory slip away. Peter in his letter, he's like, I need to stir you up by way of reminder. There's no question that we're forgetful. And there's no question that we need to rehearse these things and keep them fresh. In Acts chapter 2, in verse 42. It says, "And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers." And then a few verses later it says they were breaking bread from house to house, taking their meals. So you've got to look at the context to figure out, is this breaking of bread a meal or is this the Lord's Supper? Here, within the space of verses, it talks about the meals and it talks about, in one place, and the Lord's Supper in another. Can you imagine being devoted to the Lord's Supper and thinking that you can skip half the Sundays of your year? You can't. You can't. Thank you all for your attention this morning. We always end, and I don't have a good transition into an invitation, but we understand that there is no time like the present. We think about looking back and remembering things of the past. You know, I got a picture of Father's Day '98, a month before my dad died. Let me tell you, that picture means something to me. Right? We think about memorials of the past, but we think about what it means for us in the future and how they inform. We think about what it means in the present right now as we experience it, and we think about, where's it going? What does it mean for my future? What does it mean for my behavior? There's no time like the present. If you have something, let us know about it. Please do as we stand and sing. The great